Hello, I'm Lamisila Pamela Ngubane, and this is the Entity Dynamics podcast. Entity Dynamics is a culture development consultancy where we believe that culture creates behavior and behavior creates reality. So the title of this video is A Culture of Looking Beneath the Surface, Culture and the African Renaissance. Okay, so the African Renaissance is a much touted, much loved concept that through the revival of African culture, we will then revive the African civilizations in terms of economic, social, and political development. Okay. But now, my view is that if language is the communicator of culture, then you have to, hand in hand with the implementation, so to speak, of the African Renaissance, have a drive to develop African languages so that they can become the lingua franca of Africa, okay? So that they can become the language through which scientific research happens, industrial research, industrialization, public planning, public administration, bureaucratic development, economic activity, scientific research happens. Okay, if African languages are not the lingua franca, then the African culture of which the language is the primary artifact will not be what underpins the African Renaissance. The African Renaissance will be an idea, because already the word Renaissance is a European concept, okay? And even the word Africa, it's disputable, the epistemology of that. Some people say it is actually an African word. Some people say it's Latin, but we don't know. I don't know personally, okay? Some people say it is a sort of a bastardization of Afuraka. Some people say Akelban is the name of Africa. Some people say Kush, Ethiopia. Okay, so already, we are in murky territory. But it gets even murkier when the lingua franca of most African states are some sort of colonial language. English, in some places it's German, like Namibia, Spanish, and some Portuguese, French, Arabic. Okay, these are colonial languages, including Arabic. Okay, because Arabic didn't spread across North Africa through trade, it spread through colonization. If these languages are the languages in which we conduct economic activity and scientific and industrial research, then it means that the culture of which these languages are the primary artifact are going to be the culture that underpin our economic development and social and political development in this continent. Therefore, the African Renaissance just becomes a very nice phrase, but it actually has nothing to do with the revival of African civilization, because civilization is a cultural expression. So whose culture are we expressing if the African Renaissance is going to be based on economic, political, and social development that is based on the languages of English, French, German, Portuguese, Spanish, and Arabic? Obviously, it's going to be a reflection of those civilizations that those languages come from. Okay, because if you say umuntu ungumuntu ngabantu, that phrase is heavily laden with spiritual concepts that underpin the epistemology of the word umuntu. Okay, and then similarly, when you say inkosi inkosi ngabantu, the epistemology of the word inkosi, it's not the same as the word Lord. Okay, it's not the same as the word king or whatever. There's an epistemology that goes hand in hand with the word inkosi. Okay, and the inkosi, the fact that inkosi ngabantu speaks to the fact that the people define the parameters of the power of the king. It's not like in Europe where the king could just do whatever the heck he wanted. Okay. And then also the territory of the king is increased or diminished according to the number of people under his control, under his rulership. It's not a solid territorial space. It can diminish or grow depending on the amount of people that he has jurisdiction over. Unlike European concepts of a king, where he has his territory, uguti, how many people live there or not, it doesn't matter. It's a land demarcation. It also speaks to property ownership customs, which in Africa are very fluid and change with seasonalities and territorial migrations and such things. Okay. Which is different from the property ownership patterns of Europe. Okay. And then again, we go to the epistemology of umuntu, so umuntu ungumuntu ngabantu. If you translate it into English, it goes, a person is a person because of and through other people. The epistemology of the word umuntu is very different from the epistemology of the word person. Similarly, with inkosi and umuntu, right? Umuntu is a concept which says that the human being is divine, is an expression of the creator, and is inherently good. Western civilization, especially in the terms of Christendom, sees a human being as depraved and inherently evil. That's why in the Old Testament it says that the heart of man was wicked continuously, and that's why God sent the flood. Okay. So already, Nje, we are in very different schools of thought when it comes to the Ubuntu philosophy and Western European philosophy. Okay. So this is why I'm saying that we need to look beyond the surface. Why are we failing to implement the African Renaissance? Why are we failing to decolonize in any serious way? It's because we refuse to make our languages the lingua franca of our societies. Until we do that, the culture that we seek to reclaim through decolonization and through the African Renaissance will remain elusive, because the language of those cultures is not the language of economic, political, and social development. This is the way I see it personally. And, this is where I once again have to raise my beef with African elites. They are happy to speak the languages of the colonizers. They are happy to be aficionados in Western civilization and culture. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that. I love Western civilization and culture. I grew up on it. I love opera. I love Shakespeare. By all means, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying, if you're going to be serious about the African Renaissance and decolonization, and you're not going to be serious about creating the languages of African societies as the lingua franca of African societies, and you're going to be happy with having the colonial languages as the lingua franca, then don't talk about the African Renaissance and don't talk about decolonization. Just let's all accept Uguti we are colonized. The African Renaissance maybe will happen in 100 years. We don't know. Okay? Because culture is expressed through language. And as long as our languages are on the shelf there, and only belong to the people in the rural areas who occupy the informal economy, that's where the African Renaissance is going to be. That's where decolonization is going to be. Those are the people, essentially, who are actually decolonized, not all us elites who are completely westernized. So yeah, that's my contribution to that. And I hope we can have this conversation because, I am interested in decolonization and in a real implementation of the African Renaissance. I believe that Africa has a lot to offer the world. And I think it's a shame that we're not taking this seriously. All right. Thank you for listening. Bye.